Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Needs that we as business leaders face regarding technology, customer expectations, and quickly changing markets. This program, The Voice of Bold Business Radio, is about what it means to reach those short-term goals and increase our confidence in long-term positioning. Because when we don't have growth, when we don't have change, what do we have? We have a big fat goose egg. We might have a golden egg that is actually, you hit on it and it's hollow inside and you can tell. When we find those times, that's when it's time to tune in here, because our audio, our video, our conversations are all about real stories and real experiences and how we have synthesized our experiences in a way that we can share to learn from each other, because it's through that dimensionality, learning from others, in addition to having our own learning, that makes all the difference in the world. That makes us more effective, more creative, more innovative. And that's today's show, right? This is the program 174 called Inspired Innovation. Sometimes it's elusive, yet the thing is, what does that really mean? Because it's not even sometimes, it's always elusive, this thing called innovation. And Wayne Nix is going to talk to us about all kinds of things. You should have heard us in the green room. I'm really glad that Scott was recording, because I'm betting you we have a clip here or there that we will be able to share in addition as a bonus to this program. Wayne Nix is the founder of RNVention. He is a nurse on the front lines of our healthcare system. And in addition to that, he sees the need for change. He spent the last 4 years prototyping, raising funds, and launching his first invention, his first product, the MultiNix utility tool, just this past March. Wayne is hungry to make a change in the healthcare and innovation space. And I'm glad he's hungry, because it's not an easy place to be. That's for sure. Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Thanks for having me here, Jess.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm telling you. So, okay, today, before we get started, I saw you had a little bit of water, and I've got my gigantic cup of tea. What's the weather where you're at?
It's changing right now. They have a hurricane that's out there that's coming, not so much toward us, but we have a cold front that's coming through. So it's going to be maybe 76 degrees.
Cold front. Here I am going, I need an extra pair of socks and a whole new pair of shoes because it's 30 degrees outside and my feet are freezing.
Right. And I'm in Louisiana, just so those that know.
Yeah. There's only one thing that would have given it away, and it is the amazing accent that you have. So, everybody that's listening, that's great. Louisiana is fabulous. I have never been to the state of Louisiana except for to drive through. And so if I were to come through, what is like one thing that I would have missed just being on the interstate driving through?
Well, New Orleans, right? You got to go by New Orleans. So, and as far as the cooking, I mean, that's how we first met.
That's right. It is. Oh, yes. Wayne and I go back a few years, and I love that cooking. It's so fantastic. We share that passion. Have you been cooking lately?
I have, and I've actually had several requests, especially since the Google Plus is shutting down. They've asked, hey man, are you going to start cooking again? Because that was kind of cool. So we're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, now is that real? Google Plus is shutting down?
I heard, in like 8 months or something like that.
See, okay. Because it's been kind of like this whispering thing for a while, and I have started to ignore it because it's been so constant and nothing is ever happening. Figured we should check in on that. Well, what a bummer.
Yeah. So everybody's, going to have to move their communities that they spent so long to build. And it's kind of depressing for me because, again, this was the area that I went to that actually helped kind of unleash my, inner potential, Mm-hmm. Because the show is about innovation, and without having an environment, there is no innovation. And I didn't really have the environment here. So I had to ironically go out of the box, or think out of the box to go into a small box,
right,
to get to that community that says, hey, what would you do if you can do anything in the world, sort of jazz. So, and that's kind of how we got here. So it all started on Google Plus.
I'm telling you, and that's a great place to start. So, this concept of where do we get our ideas and the opportunity for us to be able to spend some time and create a space. And you were saying you weren't getting that environment wherever you were at in the moment, and you went out and found an online community, Google Plus, to do that.
Correct.
Were you having ideas before you found that, or was that how did that work for you?
No, definitely. I mean, I've had ideas all my life, right? Everybody has ideas. It's just how do you know when to take action on them? Or, you turn an idea into something that's profitable or that actually becomes a creation once you actually take action. So the issue was, again, you have to have a nurturing environment. So you need to have resources. You need to have people that you can bounce ideas off of, but you got to have trust. And you also have to be able to just kind of let loose sometimes, right? Ideas tell us that something's possible. That's really what it boils down to. Ideas says it would be neat if, or wouldn't that be cool? Or maybe we should do this. So what happens after the idea becomes pretty much its feasibility. Because then the point is, well, is the idea, why are you doing it? Is it for fun, for shits and giggles, or is it that you actually want to try and make some money off of this? So, and then start looking at again, what's the time, energy, money, and people that you're going to need to be able to do this? What's the time frame, and what are the first small key, performance indicators and metrics? And all that stuff really came to me again because I was in the Google Plus Hangout community, which gave me access to people that went to Boulder, like the School of Leads, Innovation, and that sort of jazz. And that's where I first learned about lean canvas and business model canvassing. So, and the irony here is I created that lean canvas, brought it to my small development center, and they said, "Oh, well, that's cute." And I'm like,
"That's cute."
Yeah, they've never seen a one-page business plan. And they said, would you like to teach it? And at that time, I was looking for help. So I'm like, no, I'm here to try and find out about this. So the irony now is that now they're teaching that lean canvas like every 6 weeks, right? But being in that space goes again to where I didn't create the innovation. That's because that's innovated in itself, right? It was the one-page business plan, or at least that model. But again, I was a fast follower just to that, to be able to say, hey, this is pretty simple, because it's not about that plan. It's about the questions you go and ask and getting out the building, right? Instead of basing it on outdated data.
Yes.
So,
yes, gathering data as you go
correct.
to make decisions and change up quickly, to recognize quickly and cause change or make different decisions. Another phrase that I hear a lot is fail fast.
Yeah, agile, right?
Yes, the whole concept of agile. Something that you said and where your ideas come from, this concept of you have to take action. And I'm curious for you, how do you choose how to take action and prioritize one idea over another? I guess another way to say that would be, how do you vet an idea to know which ones to start developing?
Well, I mean, everybody has limited resources. So you can do a SWOT analysis and a feasibility analysis. At the end of the day, I read a book called Rockefeller Habits. Not sure if you've ever heard of that, but you basically have 5 top priorities that you are to focus on. And it also has to deal with, instead of having a lot of rules, you know what your core values are. So it's interesting because it turns back onto yourself. It's not the what you want to do, it's the why you want to do it. Right? So why are we looking at doing this? And what is it going to achieve? And where is it that I want to be? It's going back to that Alice in Wonderland thing. Like, where do you want to go? So, but it just depends. Am I looking at this for my personal life, or am I looking at this for my personal growth versus am I trying to make a company? Because, we want to try and solve the world's issues. But what I've learned is, just like in gardening, I can't plant a half an acre and manage it. I got to plant a row. So what's the first thing that's going to do well? Well, potatoes do pretty good. So, and it's a lot of, it's not so much maintenance versus me trying to grow some micro heirloom tomatoes with a drip irrigation pond with these koi fish that I've never had before. You quickly learn what your skill sets are, right?
Yes.
So again, I think it's just starting small because it's very stressful no matter what business you're in. So how do you create those small wins? And that goes back again to the rock habits, which is every 90 days, right? And you evaluate even every week, what's the one thing that I have to do to move forward? How's that going to improve? How does that align with the mission vision of what I'm trying to accomplish? My mission and vision is to be able to inspire others that are in healthcare that actually work the front lines to get more involved, because I don't think you can do it by yourself. In fact, I can tell you, learn from my mistakes, kind of like Dave Ramsey, right?
Yeah.
I went off in the cowboy realm to where I'm like, I'm going to do it and kick over some stones no matter what. But you quickly realize, because the thought process for me was, we have all these engineers here in the South. How come there's not much going on with medical innovation? I even met with Senator Cassidy several weeks ago to discuss this sort of stuff. And there is innovation going on, but it's really more in the bio sector, pharmaceutical, or, that sort of jazz. But why not product development? Because most of those resources, again, they're in California, they're up north. So you got to figure out how to build strategic relationships with them going forward. Did I diverge way off the topic?
You did not. This is a story I'm apt and raptly focused on what you're saying. So yeah, it's all good.
So, because the big dream for me was to be able to help, again, bridge that gap between life science and lab science. And the difference here is we have a lot of smart scientists at the universities. Right now, I'm trying to work with several of the universities to help them spin off tech. And the concept here is I want to be able to go and say, I want to try and change that model, Jessica, where they go in a lab and they study something because it's cool to them. They want to write a paper and then they say, oh, we have this. It's worth something. Let's go figure it out what it's worth. And I'm saying, well, that's smart, but it's even smarter if I can bring you in is I can tell you I've already given some information to one of the universities. In fact, I can talk about it because I won the SBIR roadshow with it. Was the 3D photogrammetry scanning of a neonate's face, and then we can 3D print to fit that neonate specifically, right? But they weren't looking at it for a topical device. They were looking at it for an internal device, which they have a patent on. But that's because they don't do any clinics. Like, they're not clinical. They just know what, their physicians had told them, hey, we need something for hepatobiliary stents. So they're working on that.
Right.
And I'm saying, well, that's class 3. This could be class 1, and we can do this topical and forecasting 5 to 7 years out, because it's cool now, but it's going to take 5 to 7 minimum to really get something
right
that's built. So that would be, to go back to the original ideas, how do you know what to develop? I don't know. Is it still going to be relevant 5 to 7 years from now? If not, well, can you make cash on it today? Because if you need to look at your opportunity cost. Right?
Well, let's talk about that 5 to 7 years. We've got people in the audience who are like, I don't even have a business plan because my business changes so fast. And then we've got people in our audience who have 10-year business plans. And I always go back to looking at somebody like Nintendo or Evernote, right? So now we have a gaming company. Nintendo's been around for over 100 years.
Yep.
Technology, computers have not been around for 100 years. Nintendo has figured out how to adapt and stay true to their core mission. Evernote has decided to make a 100-year business plan. And I haven't checked in on them recently, but it's only been like 5 years of their 100-year business plan. And I see them doing nothing but continuing to improve and watch and change and see behavior changes. And how do you provide the tool, in their case, their service, and Nintendo, their games, in a way that people play them, right? Or use them. And that's what I hear you talking about too, Wayne, in the sense of, just because we have instant gratification, just because things change really quickly, just because we don't know what's going to happen to cause market changes or economy changes in a year, 3 years, or 5 years, doesn't mean we can't be really clear on what it is, because what we're envisioning now may not actually be what goes to market. However, what goes to market will do the same thing potentially. has a higher chance of doing the same thing, keeping it solid core. I know my lane. I know where I'm going.
Because what you're thinking of now will not be what comes out in 3 to 5 years.
Exactly. Okay, well, tell us. Okay, so we're going to totally diverge a little bit because I want to know, tell us about the MultiNix tool. How did it start? And then what is it actually, right? I mean, since we're talking about this, I think it fits right here.
Well, so the idea that I had was, as a nurse and a respiratory therapist, oftentimes I would look for tools to do the jobs that I need to get done around the hospital. And I was always having to improvise. And I'd always have nurses come to me and ask me, hey, can you unscrew this? Or can you unscrew that? And what do we use as a nurse? Well, we're supplied with scissors or hemostats, which is basically a forceps, which I'm sure I probably still have some lying around here. But that's just 2 functions, and that's not what it was designed for. But it's not so much what the tool does as the fact that I know the time that's wasted. So because as a nurse, you don't have one patient, you have several, right? So if I step into a room and I go to untwist an IV to be able to change out fluids and I can't untwist it, I look for a hemostat, which was never intended to do that. You're using it as a set of pliers. And if it's not, and you can crack the line because of the straight, narrow planes. So let's just say you don't have it and you step out the room. And when you step out the room, they go, get this. Where are you getting it from? First of all, are you getting it either from a friend that you're interrupting, or are you getting it from a supply room? And then you see that doctor you've been waiting on. So you go talk to that doctor, and then on the way back, a patient's family member stops you, and then you hear the other IV down the hall that's beeping, and then you get called overhead. So something that should have took 5 seconds takes a long, it's ridiculous. And the concept here was, why couldn't we have one simple tool that would eliminate a lot of those little quick tasks that we do every day? Not so much that it's directly affecting the patient, because you're not using this on the patient. It's just for all the multiple packages and the bandages and all that stuff that we're having to open every day. And you may not know this, but like 87% of the female population, 87% of the nurse population is female. But a large majority of them are over 50, and they're starting to have dexterity issues, my mother-in-law included. So, and that was the ask for the bottle opener. So the idea here was to have this high-end version tool, kind of like a snap-on tool or something, right? To where every profession has a tool made for them. Other than a stethoscope and a pair of scissors, we don't have anything. So, and I'm like, well, that's an untapped market. So maybe we can do this. And then once I got into this innovation space and had some interaction with like the I-Core program, which is, the science program right at the university, we pivoted our model to do more of a disposable version. And the interesting thing in here is why. It's because when we started doing customer discovery, there was obviously want and need from the frontline nurses, the end user, right, at that time. Well, we were expecting to sell to the hospital, and they said, well, we want it cheap and disposable. So we pivoted our model. We made it cheap and disposable, spent about 17 grand in about 6 months to do it, because I don't have all these things in house. I have to, outsource them. So we do that and we bring it back to them, and they say, yeah, that looks like something we can use. And we bring it to the frontline nurses and they say, oh, well, this looks cheap and disposable, and it's not going to work. So we had to pivot all the way back to the original concept. And then to be told that I can't sell to the hospital because you have to be on a GPO, which is a group purchasing organization, to find out, well, actually, because I'm a veteran of small business certified, I can sell to the hospital because they reserve some of that budget, to then find out that even though they reserve that budget, the pool where that money comes from is evaluated on a certain time frame. So again, totally pivoting back to the original concept was high-end version. We'll sell online. We can drop ship, and to get something in a hospital, it's either a tops down approach or a bottoms up approach. So,
okay, well, let's stick right there because this is going to be really key. And usually we switch to like live audience questions right here, but I want to stick with this instead, and we'll try and work in audience questions a little later.
Okay.
And that is, okay, so you're being told by one party, this is what we need. You're being told by another party, this is what we need. And there is a huge disconnect, and you're in the middle, and you're going back and forth and truly pivoting to where you think you can go.
Right.
And I want to know, what was your biggest fear? What was the biggest obstacle? And, how did you deal? Because to me, that's like cosmic 2x4s whacking you in the head.
Well, my biggest issue was at that time I'd taken on investors, and the investors wanted me to follow this cookbook methodology of innovation that everybody's teaching, right?
Yeah.
The issue is that just because I'm trying to be agile, the corporations are not. So, and to get everybody in the room at one time, it's often difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't have the confidence back then to be able to say, you know what, this is what needs to happen. So,
Okay.
I mean, I knew it, but at the same time, I didn't want to bite the hand that was feeding me. So, because again, me and my wife are both nurses, and we were talking to people. And then like even recently, like we have the Indiegogo campaign, we know our price is too high. So, but it's costing us a ton of money to make just because, again, we're a small startup. But to go back to your question, is the whole concept here is I've already had to experience this to where I am in between, but I have enough knowledge now to talk to the administrators from a clinical side, from an administrative, financial side, which we can talk about that too, but then also talk with the frontline nurses. And I'll give you an example. The patent that we have and one of the prototypes we had a flashlight embedded in the handle. So
that's cool.
We've been going around and it's like, well, what do you think about the flashlight and this, that, and the other? And more or less they said, we've got a 50-50 split. And I said, well, how do you do this now? In front of the administrators, well, would they just wait? And I'm like, all right. So once the administrator left, I said, all right, so tell me, how are you doing this? How are you checking pupils? Oh, I'm using my iPhone. and I just, when they told me that, I'm like, I know, but I just need to hear it from somebody else.
Exactly.
And the idea here was, it made me think of Kaiser Permanente out in California, where I read one of their blogs that they have engineers that have to follow these nurses around week after week to finally realize what the problem is. And I'm thinking, you know why? Because you're not a nurse. You don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to tell you something that could potentially, come back and harm me in some form of fashion with,
Well, okay. So and this is really neat because here's what I'm going to summarize, and you're going to tell me where I'm off or add something. First, being on the front lines, helping people, finding yourself without the tools that you need. And by literally like, I'm going to use my pen and I'm going to use my iPhone and I'm going to use all these different things. And so recognizing that there's a gap. So first there's the gap, and then going, wow, wouldn't it be cool if, and then going, yes, it would be so cool. I would be more efficient. I would be more attentive to the people who are coming through. And I would overall do a better job for not only my profession, the hospital or the place that I work, right?
Right.
Okay, so we've got that. And then it's now I'm going to make this tool because I know what I need. And so I go out, the I, and this is you, go out and do it. Then you've got investors that say, we want you to do it this way. And then you're hearing hospitals go, but this is really what we want. And then actually, after listening to all of them going, they've got to have expertise. I don't. They've got to know what's going on, even though it's kind of, I heard dissonance there. There's a discord. I really know what they need. You really don't. You're not the nurse here. You're not fixing this big problem.
Right.
And then to turn around and go, nope, nobody's going to buy this or want it because it doesn't live up to the expectations that the frontline nurses have, that turned around and came back. So There are three things that I take away in that. One, figuring out and trusting yourself and knowing the problem. Mm-hmm. Two, recognizing that your voice requires confidence even when you don't know what's going on. With all of the different pieces or the investors and the creation of the product and the external vendors and all that good stuff. Right. And three, that you talked about it at the beginning. You still saw not only value to add to the profession and to people who care about this job and go into the nursing profession. Mm-hmm. The other part of adding value, it's putting something that is important to you into practice to make something better.
Right.
Did I get that? Did I get a pretty good summary of that?
Yeah. The only thing you're missing is that I've been tainted with the MBA, right? I have a master's in business, but that doesn't teach you how to start a company and start a product. And it's totally different because you don't have pre-existing clients, you don't have pre-existing sales, you have nothing to manage besides yourself. And you're right, it's about having the confidence. And that's why the whole reason about the cheap disposable was so it could be a razor blade model, right? So you, that constant revenue. And it's like, well, yeah, that's fine, but we're not there yet because they want these for 20 cents. And we can't get them for 20 cents. It just takes us, $30 just to make what we have now. So, and we can't compete with the bigger companies. So, but the bigger companies are looking for small companies like me to figure this stuff out. And then that's the whole idea here is like, license us out. I don't want to be a tool company. The idea behind the tool was it was supposed to be quick, easy to get to market, get it inspiration in everybody's hands to be able like, hey, this was actually created by a husband and wife nurse team that basically one had to quit their job because of the restrictions that we have at work and developing things. And have been threatened. Tortious interference. Which,
that's an interesting phrase. That's a whole other dynamic.
Yeah, it's a tort law violation. But once the ANA, the American Nursing Association, came out with their 2017 push for innovation, I'm like, well, if they're saying it, I can talk about it.
Right.
Not to get into a lot of the legal details, but and I think it goes back again to they didn't understand what innovation is.
And we're going to pause there, take a break, and we're going to talk about what innovation is right after this break.
Right. You're listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
Use hashtag VBB Radio. That's hashtag VV. No, actually, that was not right. It's VBB, Voice of Bold Business Radio. And join the conversation because we are talking about inspired innovation. And we've been talking about a lot of the path. And Wayne is pushing in all of this information that I just want to pull out. And I'm not, because I'd rather give you a high level full story than dig into this one piece. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to know where to find him. He's going to be linked on our show notes. He's going to be linked and tagged across social media. So you will be able to get to him and answer questions. Plus, if you tell us you want him back enough, you better believe he's coming back. I mean, you heard him at the beginning. We have history here. We have history. And it started on Google+. And actually, that's where Scott and I met too, was on Google+. So there's something to be said about that. All right. So let's talk about the definition of innovation from your experience the past 4 years.
So, the Merriam Dictionary says that innovation is just the introduction of something new, right? But it has to have value. And then, a more complex definition of that, let's just keep it simple. Innovation, and the reason why it doesn't happen is because innovation is change. So it's cool to say, hey, we should innovate this and we should innovate that. Replace that with the word change. It's not going to be as accepted, right? And it also should give you some feedback to where is it even doable? Because if you have that much kickback, then there's probably going to be some things that you need to flesh out first. But innovation really boils down again to, is it value and who's it of value to? And then typically it's past tense. You don't know something's innovative until it's actually been either accepted into market or accepted into practice. And the way I usually present this when I'm speaking and presenting on this, there's a difference between idea, invention, and innovation. So idea means something possible. It's of value, but somebody has your idea right now. And invention means you have to spend resources to make that thing come to fruition. Now, if it's patentable or not, that's different. But I'm just saying, you invent something, you have to expend the resources. For it to become innovative, because you can invent in your basement, but if you don't get it downstream, if you don't get it in the market, it'll never become innovation. So, and that's the way I try and keep things simple, because in healthcare, there's this big, broad, disruptive innovation. What type of innovation are we talking about? So the challenges that healthcare have is, again, they're just trying to keep their lights on. The last thing they're trying to do is rework the whole entire system, and I get it. But at the same time, there should be skunk works at every single hospital. Just for, again, do we even need this process? Because when I start talking about a lean canvas, Jess, they start thinking Six Sigma analysis, right?
Oh, wow.
Process improvement. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking.
Well, let's say that, because yes, a leaky pipe is very different than innovation. I mean, There are a ton of people, and there's a whole section of Red Direction. All we do is work on leaky pipes. Mm-hmm. We're not Six Sigma. We're not any of that stuff. What we are is, here's the people doing the job. Here's the job that's supposed to be done. And here's the gap in between. And what can we do about it? So it's not just the communication part. It's not just efficiency. It's the whole picture. And I agree with you. We are not innovative. We are iterating improvement.
Right.
It's way different.
So, and what I found here in the South, again, is that the innovation, the hospitals that say they're innovative, they're not. They're fast followers. They're fast followers of somebody that has innovated somewhere else, because the other thing that innovation is, besides change, is risk.
Risk.
Right. And they don't want to.
How comfortable are you with risk?
Right. So what are they going to ask for? Let's say you do have a product. I need a white paper study. Well, what's a white paper? And then does it need to be a multiple white paper study over several different hospitals? Because what's that going to cost in time and energy, right? Yes. So my product's not a medical device. It's a medical tool. If it was a device, it needs classification. My tool is not to be used on somebody's.
Hold it up. For those of you who are listening only, you're not going to be able to see this, but we've got to take a look at this really cool tool. Now, does this one have a flashlight?
No, it doesn't.
The only reason I'm asking is because not only does it look cool, I'm thinking of every 7-year-old on the planet wanting to ask you and spend 10 minutes with you learning about this tool when you pull it out of your pocket, right, or whatever you keep it on when you're working.
So you want to go through it?
I do. And just at least pick like your favorite features. And the reason I'm doing this is because if it sparks our novelty and our curiosity, like, what is Wayne doing with this tool that he just pulled out when he's working with me in the ER, in a doctor's office, whatever. And I'm thinking, as soon as you said flashlight, I'm like, do you know there are features on things that we have, tools and gadgets that we didn't even understand all the features that our 7-year-old found. And right, as soon as he finds them, I'm like, of course, that makes so much sense. But we didn't stop, and we weren't creative enough or thoughtful enough to go, what all is here, and am I fully using this tool? So you've got this all in one here. What are your favorite features on it?
So not just mine. Everybody likes the fact that, you can grip with the front like pliers, right? Mm-hmm. Untwist IVs, but it also cuts. But there's a flat blade on the front. You can scrape tape off the monitors, split pills in packages, that sort of stuff. And then right here in the middle is an oxygen key, right? And it's always missing when you need it. So it's kind of like that pin at a bank, it's supposed to be chained up, and it was, but somebody
got is the chain.
Somebody still took it. So, and then, the other features are like the razor blade and that sort of jazz. But the main point was I'm trying to replace the hemostat and what we're attempting to use it for. We're trying to use it as a pair of pliers. We're trying to use it as a screwdriver, just all these impromptu things, but it's not designed for that. And I've actually seen some people get hurt trying to use these flimsy hemostats doing things. Yeah. So, and then the concept was, yes, about the idea we want to do with the hemostat is you want to be able to just kind of clip it to your shirt.
Okay.
So, because people say, well, you don't have a belt loop for that thing. Like, do you know a nurse that wears belts?
Right.
I don't. We have to have what I need at that time. Right. And when I don't need it, I have 20 of them.
Do you know? Okay. Every woman out there is going to be able to relate to this. That's exactly what happens in my handbags.
Right.
I'm lucky to have my driver's license and my keys to the car, let alone who knows what else I need for whatever meeting I'm going to. But you're absolutely right. Having something that is easy, compact, and everything is together. So neat.
And that's what we learned too, was like people are literally bringing, like from an infection control standpoint, they are bringing tool bags with them to work. So because we had, and one of the reasons why our cost is up is because our product's autoclavable, which is heat, pressure, steam. Doesn't need to be, but we did it just because we want to ensure we know that infections are one of the major things besides killing each other, which is also bad, right? But it's also one of the number one non-reimbursement issues for the hospital. So we wanted to make it to where you can clean it with anything, throw it in a dishwasher, whatever it is you want. But, it's really more, again, it's the time issue. So how do you, when we're bringing tools from home in these plastic dirty bags, is that not spreading infection? So it's the lesser of two evils is what we were trying to come up with. Right. But and having to air that dirty laundry is not really looked well upon, as you might imagine.
Well, you know what? That's actually, I think, an unfortunate part why people tend to be fast followers instead of true innovators is because sometimes it does. We have to, we're going to be peering into the underwear drawers of those people around us, the things that we kind of want to downplay, the stuff that work together, live together, whatever, right? All of that stuff that goes in there. Well, okay. So I'm thinking about this, and how has this journey impacted how you approach business today?
Because if it's business, it's about money.
Okay. Yeah.
But at the same time, again, who do you want to do business with? Because it's not going to be easy. You're not going to see eye to eye. So how do you actually even know if you care to work with these people? Like, it's the trust issue, because everybody, how do you make it of value to each side to where we're both getting what we need? Mm-hmm. So do you understand what the mission and vision is of their company, and how does it align with you? Because if they don't even know their mission and vision, how can they align with yours, right? And it's easy for us because, again, we're a startup. There's only 1 or 2 people. I think the issue becomes once you start expanding beyond 6, 7, 8 people, the mission and the vision somewhat gets lost, especially if you have a bunch of taskers. So the challenge again for me was, like, when you hire a bunch of virtual assistants, how do you have something that's really steady for them to do? But going forward, again, like I said, because I'm having this issue now, is I have an idea that I want to execute, but I don't have the skill sets to do it. And I mentioned that, if you look like Y Combinator, they're teaching you to have a hacker, hustler, and a hipster, right? Somebody hack the system, somebody knows what's cool, but then somebody that can actually close the sales. And that's really where I am, Jessica.
You can't see this if you're only listening. Every single time he says my values or mission and vision, my whole face is like lighting up. So I have to ask, you're talking about this, Wayne, what is just one of your values, and describe what it means to you?
Get shift done.
Yes. You said that once, and I thought that was going to be your answer, but I figured we would just point it out.
Right. So, and what's that mean? It basically means be effective and not busy, right? But yes, it's a one sentence that sums up everything we're trying to do, because you have to be aligned with what our mission is, right? We want to build better healthcare from the people that actually do it by bridging this gap between lab science and life science. Well, how do we do that? We don't do that by talking about it. We do that by being effective. So what do? We use Dave Allen's get things done methodology with reports and the Rockefeller Habits, so everybody has a metric. So where when I walk in the room, the metric's up there. Mm-hmm. There's no, what are we doing? That's it. What's the one thing I have to do this week, today, this month? It might not happen. It doesn't mean that ain't the focus.
Well, exactly. And other things come up. So this is really good. Okay, I'm going to shift to, we're going to try and squeeze in 2 audience questions here. The first is from Louise. When we have a great idea that we think is flawless, usually it ends up needing more work to get to the final product. And that point, I've self-doubt and self-censorship. That was all me. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that goes back again to the environment, because I can tell you that your family loves you and they're either going to try and protect you, they're probably going to try and talk you out of it. And the same thing with friends, right? Some people don't want you to be successful, even though they're their friends, because they don't, they know how busy and they're never going to see you again, right? So you need to find that, that mentor and advisor. So and they're two different things to me.
They are very different.
So to me, an advisor can give you the advice from their experience. So a mentor is in that space that's read the same books maybe you have, right? Or maybe knows somebody that can kind of guide you, and they know what it is you want to do. So again, I think it really goes back to the simple things like writing down what is it you're trying to do with this idea? Why is it important? Because it's not going to be what you expect it to be. It'll be some variation of it. So again, going back to it's always the Simon Sinek, start with the why. Why are you trying to do this? Is it because you're trying to impress yourself, or you're actually trying to do something? And if it's so important to you, you have to then take that thing, find out if it's important to somebody else, because that's really one of the first things we did. I had this idea from my tool when I was in the military, right? And I had it pop up over and over again. And then finally I took some people on the side and said, hey, I have a friend that has this crazy idea, right? And the friend's my other alter ego.
Yeah, exactly. The me that you're not really looking at right now. Right. I got to ask this for a friend. I love those.
Call my baby ugly, right? I need to hear it.
Yeah.
So, and that's really what happened was we were building a Humvee, right, and we really needed a Range Rover, and that's kind of more into the design side. But the idea here was we were building something that looked like a MacGyver tool, but the population's 87% female. So they might drive the Humvee once, but they'd really drive that Range Rover. And guess what? We're both driving on the highway. So, but to get back to the question, again, it's really just finding out who do you trust? And you got to have that team, because the team's there to have your back, right? Pipes burst under pressure. So you have to be able to relieve some of that. And I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Okay, question from Chris using hashtag VBB radio. Eva is out there listening and watching and pulling them. All right. In your opinion, what is the most important element of the innovation process?
The people.
Yeah.
Is that the process? But I just think we focus so much on the how. And I can show you 20 different hows. But at the end of the day, they always say, well, you have a little bit of luck involved. And that's true. But how do you create the luck? You show up when nobody else shows up, right? And you got to have that intestinal fortitude to keep driving forward. So, but then, the realities of life is everything takes resources. So I can't teach passion, right? You can't make somebody hungry. And nobody can make you do the things you want. But I think having a system and a documented process, which that's really more of the bigger terminology, is that innovation is really having, systems and documented processes to build something that's accepted into market due to a perceived value, maybe, right?
I love how you put that in there. There's that risk. It never goes away.
Correct. So what do? I think it's just having the people that understand, like I said, the value and the mission, and you should be able to adapt to no matter what and who you're working with.
All right, we have time for the very last question. And I want to ask you, what makes it bold? What makes it bold to embrace true inspired innovation?
What makes it bold? What would you say makes it bold? What's your opinion at this point in time?
Well, there's a lot of opinions I have at this point. Way to deflect it back to me. I do have an idea. The thing for me when it comes to innovation, and especially being inspired by it, is one, understanding the priority. How much impact? How quickly can it be done? And do we have the resources to do it? You've been saying elements of that all along. To be able to then innovate, not just iterate, innovate means taking a chance. And so it is bold to take a chance and risk our ego, risk our savings, risk our actual knowledge, risk other people judging us, risking the timeframes, risking finding the right partners. All of that risk is what is the most bold. It's always easier to follow. It is hard to innovate.
So I think the biggest challenge, or to be bold again, is you have to be that leader. It goes back to, again, I don't care what you're doing. You're the one, it's the guy in the mirror that you have to impress, right? Because it's the guy in the mirror that's going to say, oh, you didn't get that first round of funding. Oh, you didn't get this. Oh, they don't like your product how it is now. So again, being able to wrestle that guy down and say, yeah, but look at the impact that we can have, because that's literally what we did. Is every time, look, I tried to kill this thing several times, Jessica, believe it.
And it just kept coming back. Your heart kept coming back.
Conferences, and they'd be like, I can't get a single nurse to not love the concept.
Yeah. And
they'd be like, oh, and then we'd get stuff on camera like, I needed that in cath lab yesterday. I'm thinking, cath lab, yeah. You know why? The seconds matter in cath lab. They had to send somebody out to go find a hemostat to untwist something. So, because, not to get into details, but again, it was that sort of stuff to where they would say, oh, that's cool. And they would start maybe kind of embellishing on their ideas, right? Well, I had an idea for such and such, which it doesn't have to be a product. It can be a process as well. But I think what makes it bold, again, is, again, just being able to challenge yourself and know that at the end of the day, you're going to grow one way or the other. So, and you get to meet great people like you and Scott, right?
I love it. Yes. Yes. You heard it here. Audience of the Voice of Bold Business Radio, you heard it here. Wayne has shared knowledge, feelings, and emotions. And there is so much more to this story and each of the pieces, and he's distilled it for us in this conversation today. You're going to find all the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P174. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 174. You may also search the site for Wayne Nix or Inspired Innovation. Keep this conversation going and tell us what you think. Rate this program on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, whatever your preferred listening platform, however you are consuming this. We want to know you're there. We want to know you like it. We want to know what you want to see, what you want to hear, because it's people like Wayne that make the show possible. It's people like you, listeners and viewers, that make this show possible. It's relevant. Being a leader today is hard. Being a leader is getting impact while having impeccable leadership. Those two things really make a difference in how we do what we do, the way we do what we do, and how we prioritize, how we find the gaps, how willing we are to take risks. And understanding what we value is a core piece of that. Be inspired by everything that you have going on around you. Help yourself prioritize, work through, see an idea to see how feasible is it really. Let's learn from each other's experiences and apply not only Wayne's takeaways, but your takeaways for your own practical application. What do you do with inspired innovation?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.